Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us at the Create Centre this evening. Really glad to see so many people are able to join us. My name's Professor Michael Anderson, and I'm co-director with Emeritus Professor Robyn Ewing in the Create Centre, and we'll probably be joined by Associate Professor Claire Hooker, who's an Associate Director in Health and Wellbeing in the Create Centre. But before we do anything else, I'm going to hand over to Robyn, who's going to welcome everyone from her perspective and also acknowledge country.
Thanks, Michael. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We want to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we work and learn and enjoy life today. We want to particularly recognise their connection to land, water and culture and pay our respects past and present and emerging. I guess I also want to add in here just how much we have to learn from our First Nations Australians about story and the arts, because they do put those central to their doing and knowing and being and becoming. We want to also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which you are joining from and pay respect to their elders past, present and future, and extend our respect to any Aboriginal people who are joining us today. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Robyn, and welcome, Claire. Claire, do you want to say hello to everyone?
Hi, everyone. It's lovely to see you all joining us. I'm fresh jumping from a Zoom meeting of the Arts Health Network New South Wales ACT, of which I am the grandly named president. It's grandly named because we borrowed the model constitution from the Department of Theatre Training, and it requires somebody to be a president. So that's me. But I mention it because it's such an extraordinary network of practitioners and researchers who work in the arts and health space and achieve really inspiring and jaw-dropping things with their various communities of practice. And because I really love it, because it really brings artists together with people in the health sector and the people who do research. And I mention it because that's kind of the space that I work in and bring into conjunction with Create, so that we can talk about arts and education and health all in one breath, in an undivided way, as it should be. Is that enough, Robyn and Michael?
That's fantastic, Claire. Thank you so much. You'll hear from Claire, and you'll obviously hear from Robyn and myself throughout this Zoom. Also, feel free to drop any questions in the chat at any time. We might hold some of them over till the end, but we might take some of them earlier. And it's great to see some people that I recognise. It's good to see people that have been inquiring about PhDs and research on the Zoom. So welcome, everyone. So in this session, we're going to do four things. We're going to introduce the Create Centre because we're mindful that there might be some people that don't know about the Create Centre, and we can give you a bit of a sense of what the Create Centre is and does. We're going to discuss our research projects, and at that point, it's a way to open up the possibilities of connection. You don't have to be attached to a research project, but there's a bunch of research projects that we're doing that we are interested in having people attached to as researchers. So if there's something ready-made that suits you, then that might be a point of interest for you. Thirdly, we want to outline the scholarship opportunities for students. So Create is a modestly funded organisation. We don't fund students directly, but we'll talk about some of the ways that you can leverage opportunities from within the university, and we can go looking for those. And then the most important, we want to take your questions and have a discussion about anything that's important to you arising from this. So, Robyn, do you want to kick? I know we said we'd do this another way, but do you want to kick off with who Create is and what we do?
Yes, thanks, Michael. Just very briefly, the Create Centre stands for Creativity and Research, Engaging the Arts, Transforming Education, Health and Wellbeing. So we explore the relationships between creativity and the arts and learning, and the role of the arts in education, health and wellbeing. We have researchers coming from all different fields, including performance studies, medicine, business, visual arts, literature, as well as you would expect, health and wellbeing and education. And one of the things that is central to Create's work is the development of collaborative partnerships and the co-design of the work that we do. We have webinars, we have online conferences, we have roundtables, and it's pretty exciting that in the 3 years that we've been around, we have nearly 2,000 people involved across the world who receive our Create e-newsletter every 2 weeks, and keep in touch with what's happening. So we have a wide network that is also great when you're a researcher, because it certainly opens up lots of possibilities in your own research area. Michael, I might stop there because otherwise I'll take too long exploring some of the
Not at all.
things.
Thanks, Robyn. So one of the things, obviously, that we're interested in is research, and we do that research with a bunch of partners. So one of the things that I think makes us distinctive from some other centres is that we do have a lot of partners that we work with on an ongoing basis. Some of you will know these partners, some of you will know all of them, but they range from education organisations like the New South Wales Department of Education and NIDA to funding bodies like the Australia Council for the Arts, to theatre companies like Australian Theatre for Young People, to places like Sydney Opera House, Bell Shakespeare, etc., etc. So there's quite a broad engagement with a lot of different people, and you'll hear that engagement when we talk about some of the projects that we are doing at the moment that we'd love PhD students to be involved with. We take pride in those partnerships because we feel like we can do more. There's something special when you can bring researchers and educators and theatre makers and health people working in health and wellbeing together. It just makes it so much more than the sum of its parts. And so that's something that we have a very strongly held value in Create. So we're about. Oh, sorry, Robyn. Perhaps you'd like to
keep going, Michael. You're doing well.
So on a roll, okay. So we're obviously about research. That's why you've come to talk tonight. But also, we're about education, advocacy, and networking. So bringing people together to understand and work with each other around the kinds of things that matter in arts and applied arts. And we talk about applied arts. We're talking about how the arts is used in health and wellbeing, how it's used in education. Of course, there's lots of other parts of the arts that the centre is interested in but doesn't necessarily focus on. So if you're interested in, the work of Picasso, that's great. Probably, unless the work of Picasso is being used for a health and wellbeing or an education outcome, that's the kind of thing we'd be really interested in working in, rather than kind of an art for art's sake approach. And again, we're not against art for art's sake. We love art for art's sake, but the approach to our centre is really more how the arts can be applied. I've spoken about partnerships and also advice. We work with a lot of organisations around shaping their response to certain things, understanding impact, and kind of building education programs and building health and wellbeing programs. So that's the kind of DNA of Create. Robyn, did you want to talk about some of the research projects we're involved in?
Sure, but I think it might be good if we all talk about this page.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
And Claire, I wonder if you'd like to start us off by talking about arts and culture in disaster management, please.
Yeah. So one of my partners is the Creative Recovery Network. You can look them up. I'm just Googling them quickly so I can put the link into the chat. So the Creative Recovery Network has a mission of wanting to integrate arts and culture in all phases of disaster management. Now, disaster management starts from preparation and planning, or even before that, establishing the conditions under which people are to some degree able to confront an emergency, through to the actual impacts of the events and immediate responses, all the way through to the long-term so-called recovery process. And even that word recovery or resilience, of course, are beginning to be questioned in the context of a world where many communities face overlapping disasters or immediately sequential ones, and where that sense of the timescale of disasters can be different. So, you know, a natural disaster event like a flood or a fire, there is a very specific event moment and a specific response and then kind of recovery time. But many disasters, as we know, have a sort of slower burn, are slower to evolve, and the experience of the crisis is not so organized around a defined moment in time. Arts and culture are critical. Arts, culture, and creativity are critical to the capacity to achieve all of the elements that enable people to prevent, prepare for, plan around, respond to, and be resilient in relation to disasters and emergencies. And I can tell you that people who work in the disaster and emergency management space are some of the most kind of creative and exploratory, certainly quite radical people that I've met. At a recent Resilience Australia conference featured, you know, quite radical, future imaginary, future stories kind of oriented researchers, practitioners, and artists from many different disciplinary backgrounds. So there's a quite exciting element where people who are involved in disaster response and emergency management are very interested in creative approaches to reimagining the future, as we all grapple with the conditions such as climate change that produce these disasters in the first place. There has been the very first inaugural meeting of a National Arts and Culture in Disaster Management Research Network. So there are expanding opportunities now for this absolutely critical space. My own focus in the initial phases is to start to help to set out what a research agenda might look like, and in particular to work with our partners at developing frameworks that will both support research and thinking agendas that are not at all reductive and that remain creative, whilst also retaining elements that are very practical and applied and able to be plug and played for the many service-oriented partners that we have, like the SES or the RFS or the bushfire response people or emergency communications people. So there's a lot of scope for work in this area. It's a fast-growing but new area, and there's potential to work directly on projects in engagement with both artist partners and emergency response partners. And you're very welcome to be in touch with me. That goes for any of the projects against which my name is listed. And Create already is undertaking responses, work in this space, I believe, in relation to supporting arts-based initiatives to support school children who are processing traumas such as bushfires.
Thanks, Claire.
Claire. The next two projects are really looking at impact in a sense. The Attending Theatre, Legacies for Young Children, particularly looks at young children who haven't had the opportunity to see live performance and have been funded to do so. And Barking Gecko is a wonderful children's theatre company in Western Australia, and they are keen to look at not just the young children's response straight after seeing live performance, but what do they take from that over time, over 6 weeks, 6 months, a year, 2 years? And so that project is just awaiting final ethics approval. We've had the pilot underway. And there, of course, are lots of possibilities for extending this to look at other responses from other young people to theatre. Bell Shakespeare has asked Create to work with them on looking at the impact of 10 years of Bell Shakespeare's Artist in Residence program and live performance with the Bell Shakespeare Company, particularly in regional and remote areas of New South Wales. And again, we're waiting, the department, you may be aware, has suspended research in schools for last term and the coming term. So we're just waiting to get that project underway as soon as we can. But we're not only looking at it from the perspective of the students and the teachers at these schools, but also from the perspective of the creatives who are involved. And I'll quickly just mention Better Strangers project. You might know that project as Shakespeare Reloaded, which is led by Professors Liam Semler and Jackie Manuel. And it's in partnership with Barker College, who have funded their reimagining of Shakespeare for contemporary students over at least the last 5 years. And if there's a great website if you want to have a look at the kind of work that they've been doing. Claire.
Excellent. So did you want to talk about Connect Ed too, Robyn, while we're there?
Sure.
Or did you?
Yeah. The Connect Ed program is in partnership with Sydney Theatre Company, and it's an extension of the very successful school drama program that's been in operation in schools since 2009, where in this case with Connect Ed, teaching artist works with asylum seekers, refugees, and those who are learning English, adults who are learning English, particularly uses drama strategies to help gain confidence and resilience and I guess at the same time, of course, improves the learning of English. And there's a lot of interest even beyond looking at that specific area in Connect Ed. There's an interest from the department in looking at these kind of strategies being used for students learning English in schools, both primary and secondary schools.
Thanks, Robyn. I might just take a couple and then I'll hand the rest to Claire. The Creative Schools Initiative is an initiative with the University of Auckland. Peter O'Connor's the lead at the University of Auckland. It was Paul Gins is also on that project, and so is Kelly Freebody. The idea behind that initiative was to provide a survey-based way of understanding how young people understood their schools to be creative or not. And the project that was run there was called the Creative Schools Index, and it generated a report for schools to help them understand on 11 different research-based dimensions, how creative their school was, or how ready their school is for creative development and the teaching of creativity. That project is pretty well advanced, but there's certainly some work that we could do around the teacher survey and the leaders survey, which are kind of pre-funding at the moment. So there's certainly work to do there. Transforming schools and organisations is work that is ongoing and is reflected in the books Transforming Schools, Transforming Education and Transforming Organisations. If you're interested in that area, have a chat to me about that as well. And the other one that we haven't got up there is 1-2-3 Play, which is working with in early childhood. It's in association with the Matilda Centre. Again, funding is out there for that project. We're applying for funding for that project. But when we do get funding, it'll work with play in early childhood spaces to support young people, very young people, who are suffering from climate anxiety, and to a certain extent provide structures and ways to understand that through play. So happy to talk about that as well. The last one I want to talk about before I hand over to Claire to talk about some of the other ones, if she wants to, is Towards a Pedagogy of Empathy, which is Alison O'Grady and Thomas DeAngelis's project around empathic teaching and what we can understand through Stanislavskian method, actually, about teaching empathy. This is an ongoing project. It's been going on for, I think 2 to 3 years. If you're interested in discussing that with anybody, have a chat to Thomas DeAngelis about that. Alison's on leave at the moment, but if you have a chat to Thomas, he can give you a sense of what that project's all about. So, Claire, did you want to touch on any of the others, and then I'll just kind of draw it to a close by mentioning a couple of other things?
Yeah, so at the beginning of this year, Create hosted a roundtable to explore intersections and common interests in how art could contribute to young people's mental health. And there's been 2 pilot projects that have come out of that. The first is in collaboration with researchers primarily based at Black Dog Institute, who've developed this technique called body mapping. It's what it sounds like. You have a life-size portrait on the ground and a facilitated process by which people fill that outline with various kinds of visual illustrations around a particular experience. With our partner Standby, which is a suicide support organisation, we have done a trial of the use of body mapping amongst people who have a recent experience of bereavement due to suicide. It was very, very impactful. Standby are interested in taking that forward to be potentially available on a national basis, and also possibly utilised in the new mental health triage centres that are going to be opened up and being piloted in various places around Sydney. So that is a research project that's in development right now. Anybody who is interested in pursuing, I'd say particularly a PhD, obviously, there's a real opening now for somebody who would like to undertake research that examines what happens and what kinds of positive impacts this approach can have in these quite specified settings of response to suicide, opening up conversations about suicide, or as something that can be run directly at the point where people are seeking support from services through the new mental health triage centres. So the meetings for that are happening at the moment, and I must say the teams, in both cases, the teams are incredible, but the body mapping group at Black Dog Institute are very well established. The second one is a pilot project using creative methods to explore the health, people's perceptions of how racism impacts their health in Western Sydney with Western Sydney communities. And also, and perhaps just as importantly, to explore the efficacy of attempts to grapple with racism inside health systems and health services. So the opening pilot is actually funded through a community arts initiative and the Kazula Powerhouse Museum. It uses creative methods to explore staff experiences of being part of anti-racism initiatives within the health services. Again, these are explicitly intended to be pilots that support wider research projects that absolutely will be looking for PhD projects and other research support over the next little while. So that's it from me.
Fantastic. Great. So as you can see, the Create Centre's really involved in some serious, thoughtful and deep projects, and they're quite diverse. And of course, if you are from an organisation who's interested in doing research, that's also a way that you can, connect with us as well. So if you're in a school, or if you're in an arts company, or you're an independent artist and you've got an idea of some research you might like to do, that's also an option. You don't have to do a PhD to get involved in research with the University of Sydney or the Create Centre. So two main areas I want to talk about, and get your questions warmed up because we'd love to take some questions in a moment. The Australian Government Research Training Program scholarships, they are the obviously the federal government funding projects. They're around 45,000 a year, I think, and they're quite competitive. So you need to have a fairly strong track record, fairly good academic results, and potentially some experience in the area or publications in the area that you're interested in. Sometimes it's not as competitive as that, but usually it is. So, and that's 45,000 tax-free. Both of these are 45,000 tax-free. That also many, there are usually for domestic students, fee-free PhDs and Masters by Research available. The next one, the Ewing Doctoral Scholarship, which I don't think is related to our co-director.
It's not.
Is for those who are graduands or graduates of the Sydney School of Education and Social Work. So if you've done an MTeach or a BEd or whatever, or you've done a social work degree, and you've graduated or you're about to graduate, you can apply for this scholarship, and it's about the same as the Government Research Training Program scholarship. There's also little bits and pieces that are like the PRSS, the Postgraduate Research Support Scheme, which provides small amounts of money to support you, and also travelling scholarships, which are available. One of our wonderful colleagues in Create, Sue Olivic, has won 2 travelling scholarships to further her work and her research. So there's quite, I'd say, generous and good scholarships available, but they are quite competitive. So it's just worth knowing that going in. So the next steps, and I notice some of you are already onto it to get onto the newsletter. So join Create. That's really what getting our newsletter's about. Go and check your eligibility for RHD studies. So go and check on the website to see whether you've got what is required for research higher degree study to be in a master's or a PhD. We're also suggesting that you identify a project of interest from tonight. You can also go and have a look at our website, which has most of the projects that we are involved in there. But also you might want to bring something of your own to it. And then if you are interested and you want to go to the next step, maybe email the research contact directly to discuss your thoughts. And what we are suggesting is to include a one-pager on 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 how you see yourself contributing to the project. So we understand you don't know the project in great depth, and this isn't really about you knowing everything. But if you think that you have something that might be of interest, or you have an interest or an engagement with the project that you've seen, and I'll just go back to those projects quickly. They're also on the website, most of them, and we'll also put this up on our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and revisit this bit, you'll be able to. It's about 30 minutes in at this point. So yeah, so they're the next steps. Robyn, or Claire, did you want to add anything to any of that?
No, just maybe an invitation that so in Sydney Health Ethics, which is the department that I work in, we have a process for HDR applications, which involves, it would be quite normal for people to get in touch, express their interest, meet for coffee, toss around some ideas, maybe work together on creating that one pager. And the aim of that is so that people can try each other out for size, see if you're simpatico, get a feel for the project. If you are interested in any of the projects that I lead, for example, you would be more than welcome to come and attend a team meeting, meet the team, sit down, listen in. We often, if we don't have money to support paying you to write a paper, but if there's something small that we can work on, these are all excellent ways to build towards an application. And certainly an application will be very strong if there's evidence that there's already been some work being undertaken with a potential student and a lead.
Thanks, Claire. Robyn?
Oh, just quickly to say that your ideas don't have to be fully formed. You may have, some ideas that are, only just starting to form in your head. And when you actually put in an application to be considered for a PhD or an MEd research or whatever, you're only required to put a preliminary sort of outline of what you might be interested in, which is only the beginning. So you don't have to be all the way down the track before you actually start thinking about applying.
And this is my last point before we go to questions, but the other thing that I naively thought when I started thinking about PhD is that you have to do statistics and you have to do surveys. You don't actually. There's now lots of arts-informed ways and research methods that don't involve statistics and don't involve numbers potentially. That if you feel of course, if you want to do survey-based work, of course, that's fine as well. But they don't think that statistics and kind of that kind of work is necessarily the way it is. Yeah, so that's probably enough from us. Let's take some questions if we have some. You can either just put your hand up or just drop it in the chat. Either would be fine. So are there any questions? Good to see we've been incredibly clear, Robyn and Claire.
The question in the chat says timelines for applications.
Oh, okay. That's a good question. Well, there's a rolling application. I think the application for this year, for next year, closes in about a month's time. But go online and have a look. And Renee and at the University of Sydney Research Higher Degree website, and it'll let you know when the different timelines are for the different periods. So, and there's several intakes per year. So if you miss, the next one, there's always the one after. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Michael, I think some of the scholarship applications are due in about a month as well.
Yes, that's right. They are. Thanks, Robyn. Okay, so I
Sorry,
think it's been
Michael.
answered. Yeah,
Sorry, I didn't put my hand up. Putting my hand up.
that's okay.
I had
Go
a
for it.
question about ethics. I've got a project that I'm trying to develop at the school that I work at, and
Yeah.
certain parts of it, as I develop, need certain permissions and things like that. And because I want it to, I'm investigating doing it as a PhD project. I'm not quite sure where that, because usually, you get the ethics through and then you start. Is there any scope about, for example, having permissions from the school before you actually start, or does that all have to start with the acceptance of the PhD proposal?
It's a good question. I'm loath to say too much definitive about ethics until I've seen the whole case, because ethics is an exciting and challenging kind of part of what a PhD is about. There are ways to do research on a project that's already begun, but it has to be dealt with on a kind of a case-by-case basis. So it'd be a matter of us looking at what you've done and having a think about how we might deal with that. It's usually the case. So normally the way it goes, and Robyn, feel free to jump in at any time and tell me I've got this wrong, but it's usually the case that you spend a year full-time, 2 years part-time thinking about your question, forming up your project, and then the next year is, and then when you've got the proposal ready, you take it to a proposal meeting, and then ethics comes after that. So we'd have to think ethically and creatively about how we dealt with that. So the answer is it depends, I think. Robyn, did you want to throw in on that?
No, I think you're right. I think it does very much depend on the project itself, and certainly you can always do some pilot work initially, to test out things, see whether there are possibilities there, etc. But usually it's important to sort of follow the procedure of the proposal and then the ethics, etc. But as Michael says, there are other ways, retrospectively, etc., that are possible. It's fair to say that ethics is one of the biggest challenges. And of course, at the moment, as I said before, the research in schools is kind of suspended in time because of the pressure that teachers have been up against since COVID and lockdown, etc.
There's a question about honours that I think somebody's answered, but yeah, of course, it's very, very common for people to pick up research that they've done in honours and kind of scale it up, I suppose. So absolutely. Juliet, we'd love to have you come across the ditch, or we'd love to go across the ditch to do some Trans-Tasman work. Absolutely. Claire also kind of chimed in on that. Is there a cheat sheet for eligibility that's easily accessible? Not really. If you're looking to do a PhD, you usually have to have a prior research degree, and that can be an honours degree or a master's by research with a significant piece of research. By significant, I mean that you've run even a small research project, so you have some experience. However, that doesn't preclude you if you don't have that. There's other pathways that you can take. Did you want to add to that, Robyn or Claire?
Well, yes. I mean, often one pathway that's often taken is a year full-time MEd by research, which you can use as again in the particular area you're in to do some initial work or trialing or piloting etc., and then move into a PhD if you don't already have that extended piece of writing. And there are also sometimes possibilities to transfer from a master's honours or an MPhil into a PhD through demonstrating that you do have the writing expertise as well as the research understanding. So there are different pathways.
Okay. Any other questions people have? All right. Well, we've got a thing at Create, which is we don't let webinars go on longer than people's patience. So feel free, of course, to drop an email to any of the people that have been on this this webinar. Also, thank you, Anna, for setting up this webinar as she does so ably.
No problem. Might I just jump in and say on the subject of a cheat sheet, your coffee is your cheat sheet. Go get in touch with Robyn or Michael or Claire or Thomas, and they will, yeah, the chat will send you away with a list.
Okay. Any last call for questions? Thanks very much, everyone. Really look forward to hearing some of your ideas down the track. Feel free to email us, and look forward to seeing you around the Create Centre. If you've got, if you get the newsletter, you'll see all of the things that we're doing, and we'd love to have your involvement, even if you don't want to do a PhD at the moment. So just let us know how you'd like to engage, and we'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much. Have a great evening.